Tell Us About Yourself, Conversations with Game Show Contestants is produced in partnership with the Strong National Museum of Play in Rochester, New York, one of the largest history museums in the United States, and one of the leading museums serving families with highly interactive exhibits and programs. Since 1968, the Strong Museum has been dedicated to exploring the ways in which play encourages learning, creativity, and discovery, and how it illuminates cultural history. And their National Archives of Game Show History. Founded by industry veterans Bob Bowden and Howard Blumenthal, the archive is home to thousands of artifacts representing over 80 years of broadcasting, including props, set designs, video interviews with game show professionals, and other iconic elements from the history of television at play. For more information about the National Archives of Game Show History or the Strong National Museum of Play, visit museumofplay.org or call area code 585-263-2700.
Blue 35.
Tell us about yourself, would you?
Tell us something about you.
For any new viewers, won't you tell us again about yourself?
We've met before, but let's meet again. Tell us about
What
yourself.
else can you tell us about yourself?
Perhaps you'd fill us in again and tell us about yourself. Change it.
Change before. Let's see a good change right now. Small conference. It's a lot of money, gang. I don't blame you.
$11,000 lower, higher.
$11,000. Is this card higher than a 3? $22,200. Larry, not too shabby. Come on down here with me. Way to go, Larry. That took a lot of guts.
My name is Mitch Silpa. I am from Los Angeles. I'm still here, and I am an actor/writer. Well, I know we're just talking about Card Sharks, but I've actually been on 5 game shows. But we're talking specifically about Card Sharks. But the year was it 1980? It was 1980, and it was an amazing experience. Amazing. For a lot of reasons, but it was an incredible experience.
But wait a second, what other game shows have you been on?
When I was a little kid, in LA, there was our school there was a local game show at KTLA called Grab Bag, and I won an ant farm on that. And then in the later 80s, I was on a college week of Scrabble, and I lost, but I won a minimal amount of money on something. And then in the 90s, I was on a game show called Shop to Drop, and me and a girl named Vicky won. We pretended to be childhood best friends, but we had actually met on the car on the way there because we had a mutual friend. And we faked that we were friends, but we got on the show. And then in the around 2000, there was a game show on PAX TV. Do you remember PAX TV?
I do, yeah. Oh, yeah, I remember very well.
It was called Hollywood Showdown, and I won over $12,000 on that show.
Oh, that was a great show. That was with Todd Newton.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember Hollywood Showdown very well. Okay, so we can talk about these. I had no idea you had so many credits. I knew about Card Sharks, and I was really focused on that one because it's such a unique experience. But we could talk a little bit about each of them. We'll just, we'll see where it takes us.
Sure. Yeah, Card Sharks. Go ahead. What were you going to ask?
Sure. So, Mitch, I'd love to know what role game shows played in your life growing up before you became a contestant. So many of us grew up loving this type of TV. I wonder if you were one of those kids that loved game shows the way perhaps I did.
Yeah, no, I was one of those kids. I loved game shows. I still do. I grew up mostly in the 70s and 80s, and I have really clear memories of when I was I got to stay home because I was sick, from school, and my parents would be working, and I would just be left alone, and I would watch TV, and I would watch all the game shows, and I loved them. And then the soap operas would come on, and I couldn't be more bored by those when I was a kid. But I loved The Price is Right, and I love the Pyramid. That may be one of my favorites. And I also love Match Game and that, but that was later in the day, I remember. But I loved game shows, and I still remember game shows that barely lasted a season. There was one about a pinball. It was for a while in the 70s because pinball was kind of in. And there was a pinball game show with a huge pinball machine.
Yeah, the Magnificent Marble Machine. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It was a season. I don't even think it was not a hit.
No, it wasn't. And you know what? They had really drummed it up to be this massive hit. They promoted the hell out of it leading up to it. And then they made the realization once the show aired that it's not really fun to watch people play pinball. It's fun to play pinball. But to watch it, it's not as engaging
at all. And I remember it was a huge pinball machine that I wanted to play, but you're right, it's not that engaging to watch someone who play pinball. But I mean, I'd feel that way about watching sports on TV in general. Pinball's not a sport, but I'm not really into. I'd rather watch sports live than watch it on TV. That's my own thing.
Sure. Well, you made an interesting point though, because I feel like the 70s and the 80s, first of all, we're in this era where there are so many experiments in game shows. There are so many things that, like you said, lasted a season, a few weeks, and we're in this era where a lot of game shows are larger than life. I mean, you have massive tic-tac-toe on Hollywood Squares. You have a massive pinball machine on the Magnificent Marble Machine. You have massive playing cards on shows, like Gambit, Card Sharks, right. And it's a really interesting time to be a fan of that type of TV.
Yeah. Also, the sets itself, the sets were always moving, they're always rotating sets. The contestants would come out. That's all that stuff was so much fun to me.
Right. And I feel like it all came out of California in the 70s. That is the aesthetic that was
very much
born in Hollywood. I think around the time The Price is Right premiered, that was a game changer, no pun intended, in terms of the presentation of shows like that.
Right. And look at how at Match Game. I mean, what a iconic 70s game show. From the color scheme of the whole thing, wasn't it orange?
It was orange shag carpet and sand colored stucco, like an old taco restaurant.
Yeah, and everybody was drunk. It's all that.
Right. Yeah, it's a as the kids say, it was a vibe.
It was a vibe.
It really was. It's like you said, very 70s. I was going to mention as well that we're in this era where there are shows like Match Game, there are shows like The Price is Right, there are shows like Concentration that are more games rather than quiz shows. And there are things like Jeopardy and things like Split Second and kind of hard question and answer based shows. I wonder if one of those two types of game show attracted you more when you were younger.
I kind of loved them all, but there was something about I loved Concentration. Now that you remember that, I loved anything with words. If you had to solve a puzzle with words, I like that. But I also loved the Price is Right was sort of none of that, but I loved that show too. I've done a lot of thinking about game shows, which is sad, but I actually no, it's not. It's wonderful, but I couldn't articulate it at the time, but I think there's something about the fact that, especially with The Price is Right, there's an audience, and some of them are going to get picked to be on, and very few of them, and they get picked to be on, and the audience cheers, and people are cheering. There's something about the fact that there's a human being on TV or on stage, if you're there live, and everybody wants them to win. That everybody at home wants them to win, and everybody in the audience wants them to win. There's something weirdly moving about that as a human race, that we would cheer somebody on and actually get that elated over somebody's win when we're personally not benefiting from that at all. It's all them, but it's so cathartic that somebody would. I mean, I was a kid, so I don't think I ever thought that much about it. But I think there's something about that's, yes, you win money, you win prizes. It's very capitalistic and all that. But there's also something really kind of moving about the fact that as humans that we cheer some stranger on to win, and we get so invested in whether they're going to win or not. And it really is kind of a bummer when they don't. Or you hear their story and you care about them. I mean, all of that I just love. So to answer your question, I don't know if I had a specific type, because I also love, like, as I said, Match Game or Hollywood Squares that were just kind of like celebrities, like, looking like they were funny and having fun. It's just all of it.
Sure. Well, it's all contagious, happy fun. It's the kind of thing that, you watch, you can't help but have fun watching it, because everybody is clearly having the time of their life. And I could speak to what you mentioned about The Price is Right. When I was 18, I made it onto the show. I took a trip I flew from where I was in Connecticut for my 18th birthday to California. And I made it on about 3 weeks before Bob Barker retired. But the energy in that room,
Yeah.
I have trouble putting it into words to this day. And the closest I've come to is it's a religious experience. It is something that speaks to your soul. And it's real. That feeling of being happy for somebody who's winning in front of you, even though they're taking that opportunity away from you. That's something that you're not winning, because everybody's there hoping that they make it onto the show and win a car and do the whole thing and play Plinko and spin the wheel and do whatever. But you can't help but be happy in that space. And it's the kind of thing that doesn't exist in real life. And I know it doesn't exist in real life, because to me, the polar opposite of that, I don't know, Mitch, if you've ever got to play bingo.
I mean, I've played bingo.
But that to me is like the exact opposite. Like, my wife and my in-laws, we used to go to Foxwoods up in Connecticut to play bingo, largest bingo hall in the world, 5,000 people. And you could very, very easily, not easily, but it's not outside of the realm of possibility to win $60,000 in a game of bingo at Foxwoods. The last game, you could win that much money. And I see people win that much money. Is anyone excited for them in that room? Absolutely not. But something about the spirit of a show like The Price is Right just makes you happy for everybody around you. And I remember just carrying that feeling like throughout my day-to-day life, even like after the show, like for months afterwards, I was riding the crest of that wave of happiness.
Oh, that's so sweet. Yeah, I mean, I think you make an interesting point about the bingo thing. It's almost the same thing with like the lottery. When people win the lottery, it's not like people are like, it's not the same thing. People aren't happy for the person who won. They're interested in it, but it's not the same thing. There is something about that whole vibe of the studio audience or watching it at home that it's a very positive experience of a game show.
Yeah, I think there's something about it that neutralizes cynicism. I think that's the difference between those two environments, where, somebody will win on The Price is Right and you're in the studio with them and you're happy for them. You're happy that they won. Whereas, like you said, somebody could win the lottery and just that immediate just cynicism kicks in. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, why can't it be me?
Right. Yeah. Right. Right. Exactly. But I think it just speaks to what a good game show does. It brings that positive energy.
Yeah. It's fun. And I remember when I won on Card Sharks, and I was like 14 because it was a teen week, but I've watched it since as an adult. The sound of the audience during the whole bonus round, like when because I got really lucky on that show. Like my cards were really good. And just hearing the audience as I kept winning and winning and winning, it's very genuine. I mean, I could actually hear my mom and my sister in the audience when I listened to it, but there's all these strangers and they're yelling, "Go for it." And they're like really the cheering. It's very, it's a lot of energy and it's great. It's really fun energy.
I would love to know how the opportunity to play on Card Sharks materialized for you. How did you get the opportunity to try out and get on the show?
I saw an ad that was placed in the classified ads. I was a weird child, so just the fact that I was even looking at the classified ads tells you a lot about me. Because I think there was like the Jumble game was in the classified ads. Like I loved word games, so I don't know if you remember Jumble.
Okay, I love Jumble. Yeah, I'm a huge word game nerd.
Yeah, me too. So there was an ad in there that they would advertise looking for contestants for different game shows. And there was an ad in there that I noticed that was for a teen week that was coming up on Card Sharks. And Card Sharks was like a huge show at that time. It was on NBC in the morning and it was like very top rated. And so I think I called like myself, like I didn't tell my parents, and I called and got an audition for it. And then I told my parents that I was going to do it because somebody had to drive me there. And my mom, who was always very cautious, she was like really trying to be like, she didn't want me to be disappointed. She's like, she would tell me at the time, she's always like, you have to know somebody. You have to know somebody to get on these shows, and don't be disappointed if you don't get on. But it made me actually way more determined to get on to prove her wrong. But my dad, I remember, took me there, and it was the whole audition process was like you went through different. I don't know if it was the same thing with Price is Right. I think you get interviewed outside, and then selected. But there was a different rounds, and people were getting eliminated. So it was a bunch of kids. My dad dropped me off, and then they took all the kids into a room. And I remember the first round being that we had to go around one by one and stand up and like say our name and like just anything like about ourselves that we wanted to share, like where we're from, what we're interested in, what we like. And they made it really clear that they were looking for people who were like, quote unquote, animated. That's what they said the word animated. And I was like, I took that note and I'm like, I'm going to be really animated. I really wanted on the show. And I remember there was a lot of kids and they were like, I was like completely judging them like, oh, she's not animated. That person's not animated. So when it got to my turn, I was super like, hi, I'm Mitch Silpa. And then like, whatever. Anyway, so I passed the first round. They came out and then they read names. So awful. And then the people that they read, they wanted to stay. And then the other people they thanked. So then the second round was like a written test. And this is all coming back to me. And then, because they did ask questions on that show where they polled people, like kind of like Family Feud, where they're like, we polled 100 firemen and how many said this? And then after that, we got the results of that. And then they read the names and then some people were asked to leave. And then the third round, they set up these 2 cardboard podiums and we got to play the game. And I kept remembering, they kept reminded us to be animated. And I just remember I was really, I jumped up and down at one point. I accidentally knocked over the podium and it got silent. And I thought, oh God, I just blew it. I got too animated. I got way too animated.
I broke Card Sharks.
Yeah, I broke card. I mean, it was like a cardboard, but I was like, oh God, I was too hyper or something. So then we left and my dad, I remember driving home. He's like, how'd it go? And I was like, I think, I don't know. And then I don't remember how soon afterwards, maybe it was a couple weeks afterwards or a few weeks, I got a manila envelope in the audience. I mean, it's in the mail. They didn't call. They just sent a letter in the mail. It was like this big manila envelope and it said that I was selected. Congratulations that I got on, and that this was the date, and you know, what we could do, what the rules are, clothes we need to bring. They told us they'd be shooting 5 episodes, because they would shoot 5 episodes in one day and make it look like a different day. So we had to bring change of clothes, and they also told us that we had to bring a parent, and because on Card Sharks, I'm not sure if you remember it, but the bonus round, the money cards, you gamble. You're like betting whether a card's going to be higher or lower. And because we were gambling and we were kids, they said we had to pick a parent to go on with us while we were gambling. And so we would have to confer with them while we were playing the bonus round, and then say, oh, I'm going to bet $200 higher or whatever it was. So they told us all that. And then the day came, and it was like NBC, and they also told us that they picked like more kids than they needed, because they, you know, some of you and some of us got to be standby contestants. Like they would pull names out of a hat who was going to be next, or they would tell us they pulled names out of a hat. And I didn't get picked. I was there for all 5 shows, and I didn't get picked, and I was really so bummed, and I didn't get on. And then they told us that we could audition again and the next time. So I was like determined to get on. So I would always be checking the classified ads, and then it came up again, and same thing. I think I remember auditioning a second time. I don't think I was like offered it, but I had to audition again, and my mom, same thing. Don't be surprised I don't pick you, blah, blah, blah. But I got on, I got selected again, and then this time I got picked. I was the first. Me and this girl, Gina, were the first 2 picked. And I always wondered if it was like, oh, because I didn't get on last time, they pulled my name out of a hat, but they were like, oh, he's getting on. He's not going to not get on this time. But
so at this point in your life, Mitch, are you somebody who wanted to be an actor? I know that you're an actor now, but was that something that factored into this opportunity to be on Card Sharks?
Oh yeah, yes, yeah. I've always wanted to be an actor. Like, I remember being in like 3rd grade, and I hadn't been in a play yet, and thinking I should have been in a play by now. I'm behind, like thinking that in 3rd grade. So I always wanted to be an actor, and you know, and not that Card Sharks or the game shows were acting, but you know, you got to be on TV. And I also was like, you know, I was a kid, so I didn't know how anything worked. And I'm like, oh, somebody could see me on this show and put me on, you know, Family Ties or something. Like, but you know, I actually weirdly, because you know, at that time there was only 3 networks, and I remember the week or so after it had aired, my mom and I were walking somewhere in a park near, you know, where I live. I grew up in Encino, and somebody walked by us, and they said, you know, they recognized me from Card Sharks. They were like, were you just on Card Sharks? And then, you know, they were like, oh, you were great or whatever. So, I mean, I got recognized once from Card Sharks when I was a kid.
Well, that had to have felt surreal. And, you know, even just, you know, being somebody who wanted to be an actor. Like, I was the same way. Like, I've wanted to be on TV my whole life. And so any opportunity I got to get on a game show, like I've been on a few of them, but any opportunity that I had to do that, I was excited not only at the idea of winning, but just being there, being in a studio, being around the cameras, and being part of that whole process was like thrilling to me.
Yeah. Same with me. Same. And it was, I remember though, I specifically, God, I'm revealing so much. Like, I remember really practicing. Like, I would practice in my bedroom. I remember laying out I had a red deck of cards and a blue deck of cards, and I would play like a contestant, and I wouldn't, obviously I couldn't practice the questions, but I would practice playing the game. I would practice how I was going to introduce myself and what I was going to say. I was I would kind of like, I guess I was like teaching myself how to be a good contestant, but also like, what are the odds of the cards, when you should like freeze on a card, and when there's more cards that are higher or lower. If it's like an 8, that's a terrible card because it's right in the middle. But I remember practicing a lot in my bedroom by myself.
You know what's funny? The part of Card Sharks that I would have thought required extra practice, and growing up watching the show like in reruns, it's the part that always made me nervous if I were to ever play the game. It's explaining your answer to the survey questions. They'll ask a question and say, we asked 100 third graders, have you ever stolen a candy bar? How many said they have? And you couldn't just say 30. You'd have to give an explanation. So you have to say, third graders want to be honest. And I think that if they stole a candy bar, if they were really honest about it, they would tell. But you have to like go through the whole thing and explain your answer. That part always made me nervous.
So you just did it perfectly. I mean, you would have been great. I mean, and they were very clear when we auditioned, like, don't just say 30, like, we want you to talk. And, I guess that it didn't bother me, that part. Like, it didn't, I just rambled. I mean, whatever came to my head, I just said.
Well, you had that bug as well. Like, I'm sure you had some initiation into like public speaking and things like that at that time.
Yeah, a little bit. And I think I enjoyed getting up. I mean, I think I really enjoyed, like, not that getting up in front of people didn't make me nervous, but, I think when I discovered, like, I like being on stage, and I feel more confident on stage because, like, I was also, I'm gay, and it was like at that time, like, I was very in the closet. I was a kid, and it was the 70s and 80s, and so being on stage was like, being told I was good at that, or like my dad would say, "Oh, you spoke up," like he couldn't do that, and I'm like, "Oh, this is my thing that I can do," and so I would like, even though I said like it would make me nervous, but I actually liked when I would get up on stage and speak, whether it was a speech or whatever. So I don't think that part scared me, or I didn't put much thought into that part of the show.
Right. It seemed like you were more focused on the card element, on the odds, and kind of playing that part properly, which I guess is a good strategy as well, because you can't have one without the other.
True. And also, I mean, those questions were so, like, they weren't difficult. And they made it even like more simple because we were kids. They weren't like, how many, we pulled 100 firemen. And this is not a question, but how many people know this is Bugs Bunny or something like that? And, maybe they were more difficult than that.
Right.
So, and you were like, well, I think that's going to be a relatively high number because most people know Bugs Bunny. So I'm going to say 91 or whatever.
Right.
But, yeah. And plus, even if you lost the question, like the cards could turn so many different ways that, you would get a chance if the person who won the question still could like mess up on the cards, and then you get an opportunity and still win the game.
What a great game show. It's so like intricate, and there's so many layers of strategy. Card Sharks to me is just like one of the greats.
Yeah. And I agree. I actually think in retrospect, okay, so this is all coming back to me now. So normally on Card Sharks, what would happen is there would be the returning champion and then the challenger, and then somebody would win. This is when the adults played. And then you'd go to the bonus round, and then you'd come back, and there'd be a new challenger. And I think you would just keep playing until someone beat you, or maybe, you could do it 5 times or some number until you have to give it up. But for the teen week, because we were kids, they wanted to give us like a fair shot at it. So what would happen was you were going to play twice, no matter what. So like I played this girl, Gina, and I beat her, and then I won at the bonus round, but then I came back and played Gina again, and then she beat me the second time. And then we never played again. you just got to play two different things. So everyone got an opportunity to win. Not everyone did. You could still win twice, but
Sure, it's like a double elimination kind of thing.
right. Yes. And that was it. It wasn't like you went on and you kept beating all the other children. Like you would, you just got that, you just could be one child. But
Aw, where's the fun?
Here's that fun. Yeah. But yeah, that was, yeah. So that was how I remember. And then, I remember my, like I mean, do you know the theater, the Groundlings Theater in Los Angeles? Have you ever heard of it?
I'm familiar with it, yes.
I'm part of that theater, and I was in the Groundlings for many years, and I had done a solo show there that was called Winter Growing Up Game Show, that was about my experiences on like five different game shows. And one of the things I mentioned was like car checks was the big one because I won the most on that one, but the selection of a parent, when they told me I had to pick a parent to go and play the bonus round with if I won, and I had to choose between my parents, and I like really, in all honesty, I wanted to pick my mom because I was just closer with her. Sure. My dad and I at the time had a very strained relationship, but I picked my dad because I knew, I felt like he'd be hurt by that. So I picked him. Also, my dad was a bit of a gambler, and I was more the sensible kid. But we got on the show, and when my dad and I got on, it's so funny to watch it now because it's such a time capsule, and I'm so glad I picked him because it's such a time capsule of us and our relationship because we actually fought on TV. My dad is telling me at every card to bet it all. Every card he says, bet it all, bet it all. And I wouldn't do what he said. I would like turn and go, I would consult with him, and he'd say, bet it all, bet it all. And I'd say $200 higher or whatever I wanted to do because I felt like I did all the work getting on this show. I'm not going to listen to, I've practiced, I'm going to do. And my dad would do these reactions behind me. Like I would not do what he wanted, and he would go, oh, like behind me. And there's one time where I thought the camera was off me. I literally can catch me saying, shut up, Dad. But I got so lucky with my cards. I mean, they were crazy lucky that had I had listened to my dad, I would have won more money. But I actually broke a record on that show. When we came back from commercial, they told me that I had won the most money ever won by a teenager on that show because I won $28,800 altogether, or $22,800, and you could win up to $28,000, right? But I won $22,000, and then I won extra for winning the game, whatever that was, and but it's really, my dad has since passed away, and like when I've watched it, it's such a beautiful moment for me personally because the moment where the last card I had like, I think I had like $14,000, and it was a 3, and I think it was like 14,200 or something, and I bet like $14,000 higher. I mean, it was crazy that I did that because it could have been a 2. I mean, the odds were in my favor, but I wasn't even thinking at that point. It just seemed like numbers. It didn't even seem like money to me. But when it turned, and I think it was an 8 or whatever it was, and we won, the moment that we win, my dad and I just like jumping up and down and hugging each other it's such a beautiful moment for me to have because we just weren't close at that time. And it's such a moment where we were working together for something and we won. So I'm very grateful that I picked him, that I have that memory with him. And it does sort of, it's a personal moment, and it also speaks to like sort of what we were saying earlier about the energy and the positivity of like the joy of what a game show, especially at that time, was. And I'm just very grateful that I had that memory.
Sure, that's a beautiful experience. And to be able to, like you said, watch it again and again.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, but like people, like I'm shocked that somebody posted it on like YouTube, and I don't know who, I never did, but like that people are like comment on it. It's so surreal to me. They're like, this kid really got lucky or whatever they're commenting. But like, it's so like, who posted this? Like, and you could be like, I think if you Google Mitch Big Win Card Sharks, it's like my episode. And it's so strange. So strange because I was like 14, you know.
Well, I want to go back to the experience of the show in a second, but how long, and it's okay if you don't remember, how do I want to ask this? How long did you wait until you were able to watch yourself on TV? Like, I'm sure you saw it when it was broadcast, but, you know, for it to be rerun decades later, I'm sure you never expected that.
No, I watched it when it ran, and actually, this will tell you, we didn't own this is back when we had VCR, people had VCRs. We didn't have a VCR, and because I got on Card Sharks, we bought a VCR, and so we recorded it on VHS, and so I always had the tape, and I didn't watch it that much when my parents would show it to people, or I just had it. And I actually found it like I didn't watch it for many years. Like I didn't like watching it because I mean I did my own insecurity about, like, you know, how we all are at 14. It's not a great age and all the feelings of that. And so then I would sometimes show it to people like later in life in my 20s, and I would still have this discomfort about watching it. And then it wasn't until later that I'm like, now I could watch it. And it was like, oh my God, that was like so cute. I was like a little 14-year-old. But yeah, the idea that it would be rerun, it was so crazy that someone's like, yeah, I saw you on Card Sharks. And like, really? It's like, that was on again? It's super cool.
I had the pleasure a few weeks ago of talking to, he was a kid in the 80s, but I'm talking to a man named Sasha Segan. And Sasha was a panelist on a game show that Mark Goodson, Bill Todman was doing around that time called Child's Play. And the main idea of Child's Play was that a kid would get a word in a pre-taped segment, and he or she would have to describe the word without using the word. And adults would have to figure out what the kids were talking about. They have to guess the words. And he was on like 100 episodes of this show, and he was sort of like the breakout star of this particular series. And one of the things he spoke fondly of was the way he and the rest of the kids were treated by the staff, that they were really sort of cared for in a very nurturing and in a very positive sort of way. I wonder if you have any similar insight into the way the staff of Card Sharks treated you as a 14-year-old getting ready to go on national TV.
Oh, they were, my memory is that they were all really, same thing, like really lovely and like, and very supportive and very, you know, I mean, there's certain rules that they explain to us, like how we can only talk to each other. You can't talk to anybody who works there. If we get on the show, I remember they said when we lead you out there, you can't even wave at your parents in the audience. You really, you know, like there's all these things because of, you know, the game show scandals of the 50s, that they're very, you know, it's like a federal crime now. So they're very protective of that. But they were very, I mean, yeah, they were lovely. They were really supportive and you felt very taken care of. And yeah, that's, and when I like didn't get on the first time, you know, when you're in, and it happened with other kids this time, they were nothing but really sweet, and they understood it's probably really disappointing and heartbreaking to be a kid and make it that far and not get on. And I just remember them being very like sensitive to that and handling that really well. My experience every time I've been on a game show has been like the contestant coordinators are just like like wonderful. They're just like really like great energy, and because they want you to be, but they're all, and it always seems genuine. It doesn't seem fake. So I'm only ever, every game show that I've been on, I mean, I barely remember the grab bag one, but like has been nothing but like just positive, you know. And I have to say that when I was on Shop Tree Drop, the contestant coordinator on that show liked me, and when she was casting Hollywood Showdown that was on PAX, and she got a hold of me somehow. I don't know if she saw my number or something. She must have stolen my number, and she asked me if I wanted to audition for Hollywood Showdown. So, and I did, and got on that and won. So, yeah, she was a little blanking on her name, but she was wonderful. Yeah, I had a wonderful experience being a kid with the staff. They were great.
And tell me what you remember about meeting Jim Perry, who is one of my favorite game show hosts ever. He, to me, is like, he's the archetype for that type of game show host.
He was so nice. Like very down to earth, nice. He just was like, he was very warm. You didn't really get to talk to him much during the commercial break, but he was really nice. And I remember when we were leaving, and I was walking out with my parents and going into the parking lot at NBC, and we saw Jim Perry like walk to his car, and he like said something to us like, great job. Like he was really like, give us a thumbs up. But he was just really, he just seemed very down to earth. There was nothing like, he just seemed like a nice guy.
How wonderful. I have heard, like, that seems to be the consensus from a lot of the people that I've talked to who have met him. Actually, Mark DiCarlo, who, if I'm not mistaken, is part of the Groundlings in Los Angeles, or was one of the founding members, or he had something to do with the Groundlings. He was on Sale of the Century in the mid or late 80s and had a chance to meet Jim Perry as well. And yeah, same thing. He just seemed to be a class act all around.
Yeah, and actually seemed to care, like, if you won or not, or did well. Like, he's like very, like, it's funny to watch him now, like, when we're in the bonus round and my dad and I are like betting like maniacs, and he's like, oh, they're gamblers, and he's like, but he's genuinely happy for us. Like, he's really, it's not, you can tell it was sincere. He was very happy for us.
It's funny that you mentioned the cards, practicing with the cards, before the show. So I'm doing this podcast for the National Archives of Game Show History. They're opening a physical space in a couple years, but part of the process right now is gathering a lot of props and set pieces and things that belong to some of these shows and building some sort of physical space where people can sort of reminisce and see parts of these shows that, you don't usually get to see up close unless you're there. Back in May, I took a trip to the archive in Rochester, and I made a donation. I somehow came into ownership of these, but they're in the archive now. A set of cards from Card Sharks. So I don't know if you had much experience like touching the cards, but I had all the diamonds from the red deck for a really long time. They're like 1.5 feet by 2 feet tall. I mean, they're huge, and they're
huge.
Almost impossible. They're almost impossible to turn with one hand. And if you ever watch Card Sharks, Jim Perry was the master of that. It could do it so, effortlessly.
I did get to touch the cards because backstage there was a coin. It was a coin toss. Who was going to play the red cards and who was going to play the blue cards, and then we had to cut our cards. So they would show us our deck of cards, and then we had to like pull. I mean, they were huge. We had to like cut the cards, like pull them out, and then they put the other one on top, and then they made us like we could see where they were, so no one touched them. But we were the only ones allowed to cut the cards.
Oh, so you were able? That's right, because they always say that the cards are cut before they go on the air.
Yeah, it really is true. And then we can see it, so it's not like anyone's cheating. But yeah, It was all I hadn't thought about that, but I remember those cars were huge. I wish I had one. Like, just it'd be a cool thing to have one of those cards. They sent us a picture of all the kids. Like the last day they took a picture of us on the set. And I still have that somewhere, like a picture of all of us. I think Jim Perry's in the picture, and the models too, I think were in it. Janice and something. I can't remember the other name of that model. I can't even believe I remember Janice. I think it was Janice, but
I can't believe I don't remember them. Jeez.
Yeah, Janice seems like the name. It seems like a model's name at that time on game shows. Like,
Sure, there was always a
Janice,
Jan or something, right?
Yeah. Turn the cards, Janice, Jan. But yeah, I have that. But that's pretty awesome that you got to touch that and have that.
I remember when I first got them. One of the first things I did, I was sitting like kind of where I am in my living room right now, sitting on the couch holding one and just turning it back and forth and just imagining the wrist strength it has to take to do this. When he did it from 78 to 81 or 82, like 3 or 4 years of that, is incredible.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that does take wrist strength. I mean, and I think the models were the ones who would put the cards up. I think they put the cards up and Jim turned them.
Correct. Yeah. Right, they would use both hands and they put them up, and then he would come and bang and flip them one at a time.
Yeah. I wonder if he ever injured his wrist.
I guess we'll never know.
We'll never know.
Tell Us About Yourself. Conversations with Game Show Contestants is hosted, produced, and edited by me, Christian Carrion, from my studio in beautiful downtown Lancaster City, Pennsylvania. Co-executive producer Cory Anotado. Researcher Chuck Donegan. This has been a production of BuzzerBlog, the most popular game show website in the world, in partnership with the National Archives of Game Show History at the Strong National Museum of Play in Rochester, New York. For more information, visit museumofplay.org. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Christian Carrion. Good night. Tell Us About Yourself. Conversations with Game Show Contestants is produced in partnership with the Strong National Museum of Play in Rochester, New York, one of the largest history museums in the United States and one of the leading museums serving families with highly interactive exhibits and programs. Since 1968, the Strong Museum has been dedicated to exploring the ways in which play encourages learning, creativity, and discovery, and how it illuminates cultural history. And their National Archives of Game Show History. Founded by industry veterans Bob Bowden and Howard Blumenthal, the archive is home to thousands of artifacts representing over 80 years of broadcasting, including props, set designs, video interviews with game show professionals, and other iconic elements from the history of television at play. For more information about the National Archives of Game Show History or the Strong National Museum of Play, visit museumofplay.org or call area code 585-263-2700. So, Mitch, one of the things that I've learned in having these conversations with so many contestants over like seems like a 50, 60-year span of, game show history, whether they're contestants on shows in the 50s or 60s or contestants, on a show last year, no matter how long it's been, no matter how distant or faded the memories are, the one thing that I find in common is that it's never less fun to talk about it. It's always a fun experience, and it's always fun to look back on. And it seems like that is your insight into this particular memory as well.
Yeah, it is, especially when you win. Like, it's a really fun memory to remember that. But even like, I didn't win on Scrabble, but it's a fun memory. I still remember the word I lost on, but I think those things stay with you. But
what was the clue?
It was, the word was clouds, and I think the clue was, oh my God, they're up in the air or something like that. Oh, and like, it's so, I think, I'm embarrassed now, but it was like CLO and the S were showing. So the U and the D were not. And I had no clue. And I think I said, clocks? And they're like, no. And then the girl got it. She said clouds. I'm like, oh God, of course. Yeah, I have friends that I was in college with who would say clocks to me. to give me a little shit. But like,
how nice of them.
Hey, clocks. Yeah, I know.
Okay. I lost. I was on Millionaire my freshman year of college, and I walked away from a geography question, and for years afterwards, my friends in school would just call me Baltic Sea.
Wait, how much did you win?
15,000.
That's still pretty good.
It wasn't bad for my first. I had just got into college. I had been to class for like a month when I got on that show. Yeah, it helped a lot.
Yeah.
It really did help a lot. I had one lifeline left. I love talking about this. I had one lifeline left, but it was the only lifeline. So the one I had left was called a double dip. So I could use it and answer the question. And if I was wrong, I could answer it again. But that's the only lifeline they ever gave a contestant where if you use it, you forfeit your ability to walk away.
Oh, so you
you can't use it, guess wrong, and go, oh, okay, I'm walking away. You have to give a second answer.
Yeah, you have to make a tough decision.
Right. So instead of using that, I couldn't think of it. I just walked.
What a Sophie's choice.
It really was. It was
not at all. That's not Sophie's. Yeah, well, I'm glad you got $15,000.
Oh, it was great. It was great. I actually, you know what? I'm going to hit stop